The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
Georgia Capital plc announced an important development in its corporate governance. Irakli Gilauri has proposed to the board that upon the completion of his current employment contract as chairman and CEO in May 2023, the roles of chairman and CEO should be separated and that he would step down as CEO and continue as board chairman. Gilauri made this proposal as he considered that this move is in the best interests of the company, enabling it to continue to take advantage of his strategic guidance in the investment process, while at the same time advancing the succession planning of the organization by elevating Nicholas Gamkrelidze, currently Deputy CEO of Georgia Capital, to the role of Chief Executive Officer. The independent non-executive members of the Georgian Capital have reflected separately on Mr. Gilauri's proposal and have unanimously agreed that it is indeed in Georgia Capital's best interests and that separating the chairman CEO roles will improve its already strong governance profile. Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili handed over the second completed part of Georgia's European Union membership questionnaire filled out by the country ahead of schedule to Karl Hartzell, the head of the EU delegation to Georgia, on Tuesday. I'm pleased to present the answers to the questionnaire. We have completed it. A total of 7 volumes have been published, and I'm happy to hand them over to you. We look forward to hearing the decision of the European Commission and its member states, PM said. The deadline for the delivery of the second part of the questionnaire, which included 33 chapters and up to 2,300 questions on specific sectors of the country, had been set by the European Union for May 13. In order to fill the volume of the questionnaire effectively and in the shortest possible time, all relevant state agencies were involved, and the process was personally supervised by the head of government. The Georgian government approved several important projects to promote the development of green renewable energy in the country. This includes solar, wind, and hydropower projects. The installed capacity of the projects is 150 megawatts, and the total investment cost is approximately USD 200 million. According to Romeo Mikautadze, Deputy Minister of Economy, of this project, 110 megawatt accounts for wind projects, 20 megawatt solar projects, and the rest of hydropower projects. These projects will be implemented in several locations, namely in Gorik, Sani, and Aspinza. Their investment value will be 200 million USD. It will be both local and foreign investments. These capacities will be added to our energy system, which will reduce our dependence on neighboring countries and is a step forward on the path to energy independence, said Romeo Mikautadze. Revash Javelidze was appointed as the head of government administration. So far, he has been serving as deputy head of the government administration and parliamentary secretary of the government of Georgia. He has a sound experience in working for public and private sectors of the country. At various times, he served as a deputy minister of sports and youth of Georgia and occupied progressing positions at large international companies. Revash Javelidze holds a master's degree in law from the University of Texas. With this appointment, he is a successor of Ilya Darchiashvili, former head of government administration, who is currently a minister of foreign affairs of Georgia. The European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, EBRD, on Tuesday cut its growth projections for 2022 by 0.6 percentage points for its region, as Russia's war on Ukraine is expected to cause a greater economic slowdown and more inflationary pressure. The EBRD expected that regions where it operates will grow 1.1% this year in its latest regional economic prospects report, compared to 1.7% in its previous projection released in March. The region's gross domestic product growth will recover to 4.7% next year, a 0.3 percentage point drop from this year. The Ukrainian economy is estimated to contract by 30%, it said. The previous growth forecast was minus 20%. The GDP growth in Ukraine is foreseen to back to 25% next year, assuming that substantial reconstruction work has begun by then. The pace of recovery will be determined by how long the hostilities last, the shape of any post-war settlement, the extent of reconstruction, and the number of refugees who return to home, it said. Beata Javorcik, the chief economist of the EBRD, said only last November we were predicting growth of 3.8% across our regions for this year, but at the time we described last year recovery and its momentum into 2022 as bittersweet, tainted by worries over high commodity prices. The situation now is more concerning still, with new rises in food and energy prices driven by Russia's war in Ukraine, further stoking inflation. And as we well know, poorer households suffer even higher rates of inflation than others because food and energy account for a larger share of their domestic budgets, she added. This is the Checkpoints, authored and hosted by me. I'm Elena Gvangilashvili, and the Checkpoints team is ready to give you the Business and Economics Week in one and only English language program. The Swiss bank Credit Suisse clarifies the statement made by Bidzina Ivanishvili to BMG. According to the bank, Ivanishvili's statement that the bank is exerting political pressure on him is completely groundless. In addition, the bank clarifies that there have not been any delays. The bank notes that they have appealed the decision of the Bermuda court, which imposed a compensation of more than USD 500 million in favor of Ivanishvili. Any allegation that Credit Suisse is exerting political pressure is completely unfounded. There were no delays. Please read our statements regarding the verdict passed by the Bermuda court. The verdict is not final because we have appealed against it, the bank said in a written response. A few days ago, the PR agency hired by Bidzina Ivanishvili made a statement according to which Credit Suisse delayed bank transfers to its trust. The statement said that Ivanishvili had sued the bank for discrimination and political pressure. Later, Bidzina Ivanishvili's lawyer responded to the information posted by BM.G. Bidzina Ivanishvili's lawyer, Victor Lipiani, responded to the article published on BMG regarding the issue where Credit Suisse responded to Bidzina Ivanishvili's accusations. As Lipiani said, formally, the bank is right, as it does not have direct contact with the client, but that is not entirely true. Very interesting information was published today by the Georgian web portal BMG. The article reads that the news agency has talked to the representative of Credit Suisse, but it is missing who they have talked to. According to Credit Suisse, the bank group has nothing common with this pressure. Formally, the bank is right. It has no direct contact with its client, but the issue is something else. This is half true, while the whole truth is that all the trust structures that the bank offered to Mr. Ivanishvili to manage its own assets were organized by the bank, but this is not a complete history either. It is also important that the Bermuda court answers one very important question, that our defendant is not directly the bank in all jurisdictions, but the trust structures, while the court notes that these two separate legal entities are acting under one hand. This is one of the main and defining arguments and theses in the decision of the Bermuda court. It will be one of our main trump cards. So any such statement by the bank that I'm not in the middle of anything is wrong. It is said very softly when the bank talks about the delays. Believe me, when we talk about specific facts, including the same well-known transfer that led to our claim, the transfer order was issued on March 4 and completed on April 4. However, previous transfers were completed within 48 to 72 hours. We cannot call this a delay. It is creating an obstacle for the client to freely manage his asset. Money does not matter so much when we talk about Jones Island, as our approach is very straightforward and linear. The bank must give answers and we must raise the issue of liability. The lawsuit was filed a few weeks ago. The most important thing for us is to point out all the irregularities in accordance with the law, Lipiani told Imedi TV. Unreal. It was an absolute dream come true when I decided to create a Demnagram account. I never would have imagined that one day I would be there and have a chance to meet so many incredible people. What Demna's brought to Balenciaga is impressive. I was extremely thrilled for the warm welcome and amazing hospitality. You gave me a lot of reasons to be thankful to you. I can never thank you enough, but this is a start. This was the Instagram post of Saba Bahia that was indeed a start. Why? Nini Longorashvili will tell us more.
I remember Demna's first years and the very first collection for Balenciaga. This was my first communication with Demna on Facebook. I did not expect him to answer, but he wrote back soon. A very inspirational text. Believe in yourself, follow your dreams, and they will definitely take you to a very good place. Everything happened just like Demna had told me. Demna found out it was me who had sent a letter to at a fashion show that I attended in March. Today the society understands well what Demna does in fashion and arts. It was different in 2017-18. I wanted to show my respect for Demna and decided to put together an Instagram page, Demnagram. I approached the page very seriously. From the very beginning, I didn't want it to be a fun page, rather a support page, and had a very professional attitude towards it. Despite all my efforts, I still didn't believe that the page would become so successful and that in 3-4 years I would have an official contract with Balenciaga. Demnagram has to do what it has been doing till this day. The professionalism will rise since I will work with Balenciaga's arts and marketing team and ensure that the page develops further. Most importantly, all photos will be submitted officially by Balenciaga. A person might not be wearing Balenciaga, but be Balenciaga. And that's a fact. Demna created the style of my generation. He showed us that fashion can be important and reach everyone. Balenciaga's every show is a short film, and Demna tells us his story. That's the reason why Demna is the best designer of our times.
Moody's Investors Service changed its outlook on Georgia Ba2 credit rating to negative from stable. The agency said the decision reflects the heightened geopolitical event risks from Russia's ongoing military invasion of Ukraine, given Georgia's ongoing, albeit frozen, tensions with Russia over South Ossetia and Abkhazia, the unpredictability of Russia's strategic intentions in the region and Georgia's border with Russia. The affirmation of the ratings is underpinned by the solid fundamentals of Georgia's fiscal and monetary institutions, which are likely to allow the continuation of an effective macroeconomic policy response to any further COVID disruptions and to offset the negative economic impacts of slowing regional growth due to the ongoing conflict. Moody's expects 3.8% economic growth in Georgia this year, which is twice less than the 7.3% growth forecast made by the organization before the war. In addition, the credit agency estimates that economic growth in Georgia will average 4 to 5% in the coming years. On May 11, 2022, the Monetary Policy Committee of the National Bank of Georgia decided to keep the refinancing rate unchanged. The monetary policy rate is 11%. Elevated inflation and inflationary risks remain a recent global challenge. While inflationary processes were envisaged to stabilize in 2022, the Russian war against Ukraine created new risks. In particular, the sanctions imposed on Russia due to its military actions and supply-side disruptions have significantly increased prices of a number of product categories on international markets. Therefore, inflation increased significantly both in developed and developing countries. Global surge in prices was transmitted to the Georgian market as well, and despite the slowdown compared to the beginning of the year, inflation in Georgia remains high, and that's 12.8%. Had the aforementioned shock not materialized, sharp deceleration in inflation would have been expected. It should be noted that against the backdrop of the military activities, the external sector outlook is highly uncertain. At the same time, recent appreciation of lari supported the decrease in imported inflation. inflation. Moreover, while nominal wage growth rates have recently increased, total productivity is improving as well, meaning that at this stage there are no significant pressures on prices stemming from the labor market. According to the current forecast, other things equal, inflation will remain high over the course of the year. However, it will have a declining path as last year's one-off effects are phased out, and given that monetary policy remains tight. Despite monetary policy tightening, though, credit activity remains strong, partly due to consumer loans on the one hand and foreign currency loans on the other. In response to the NBG will keep the remuneration of reserve requirements on funds borrowed in the US dollar at 0%, even as the Fed funds rate increases. If necessary, in order to reduce the growth in foreign currency FX loans, the NBG may also introduce additional measures, including an increase in the upper bound of FX reserve requirements, currently at 25%. At the same time, recent macroprudential measures are expected to support the slowdown of current high growth in consumer lending. As for the aggregate demand, according to a revised forecast, the economy is expected to grow by about 4.5% in 2022. However, it should be noted that given current events, forecast uncertainty is particularly high. In response to rising inflationary risks, the gradual increase in the monetary policy rate over the past year has led to a tight monetary policy stance. Monetary policy will keep a tightening bias until the risks of rising inflation expectations are sufficiently mitigated, NBG said. Foreign demand continued significant recovery in the first quarter of 2022. However, risks in this direction remain high due to the war in Ukraine. According to the preliminary data, in January-March 2022, exports of goods have increased by 43% annually. In the same period, the revenues from international travel have increased approximately sevenfold year-on-year, although the decrease compared to the corresponding period of 2019 is still significant, and that's around 32%. Goods imports have also increased against the background of activated domestic demand by 36% annually in January-March 2022. The NBG continuously monitors the developments in the economy and financial markets and will use all available tools to ensure price stability, it said. The next meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee will be held on June 22, 2022. By the way, Galton Taggart earlier forecasted that the refinancing rate could reach 12%. The logic of the chief economist of the Georgian Investment Bank was that the NBG's signal that the National Bank in controlling inflation is important, although much of the inflation is caused not by demand but by supply. We think the National Bank will have to raise its refinancing rate tomorrow. This can be up to 1 percentage point. The inflation forecast that we have, 10.5%, provides a certain tightening of the policy by the National Bank, said Lasha Kaftaradze. The economist noted that the responsibility for reducing inflation in the country lies with the National Bank and the government. Lasha Kaftaradze believes that it would be right if the government reduces the level of budget deficit this year. Monetary policy alone cannot alleviate the inflationary pressure we have. Fiscal policy is also important. The fiscal deficit from 2020 onwards is very high, and it changes a lot in macroeconomics. This year, in order to alleviate the pressure, it is necessary to reduce the budget deficit. This will also give a positive opportunity. If we want inflation to be more or less subdued, fiscal and monetary policies must go in the same direction. No fiscal monetary policy can guarantee that inflation will return to 3% by the end of the year. But here it is important to see a downward trend, Lasha Kaftaradze stated. As of the next week, the Parliament will start discussing the report on the implementation of the 2022 state budget for 3 months. As chairman of the Budget and Finance Committee, Irakli Kovzanadze highlighted at the Parliament Bureau sitting, there has been a good GDP growth of 14.4% in the first 3 months of 2022, while the tax revenues exceeded the anticipated figures. Irakli Kovzanadze concentrated on a number of aspects of the state budget's execution in January-March March, budget receipts totaled 4,826 million lari. In terms of state budget tax receipts, which are always an indicator of how the economy is doing, we received more than we expected. The tax revenue plan in particular was overachieved. It increased by over 11 million lari, totaling 3,688 million lari. Profit tax was met by 124.1% according to taxes. VAT also exceeded the anticipated figures by 112.7%. The amount of the consumed money from the state budget is 4,266 million lari in the first 3 months of 2022. Irakli Govzanadze clarified. The committee's conclusive meeting will take place on June the 1st. That's all for the reviews for a while. Let me focus your attention on the TIWB initiative, and it works in Georgia too. Tax Inspectors Without Borders is a joint initiative of the OECD and UNDP supporting countries in building tax audit capacity. TIWB programs complement the broader efforts of the international community to strengthen cooperation on tax matters and contribute to the domestic resource mobilization efforts of developing countries. Rusudan Emularia, head of TIWB Secretariat, sat down with the checkpoints. Rusum, thank you for your time. Today we will be talking about TIWB. This is Tax Inspectors Without Borders. And this will be concept will coming across quite often, right? So what it is about and why that initiative matters.
Thank you. The Tax Inspectors Without Borders, TIWB, is a joint initiative of the OECD and UNDP that embeds tax experts in developing countries' tax administrations to provide a practical hands-on assistance on the real audit cases. It's based on the learning by doing approach. So it's mainly about bridging the gaps between theory and practice.
And Georgia is part of this initiative, right?
Absolutely. Currently, we're working in more than 54 jurisdictions, and Georgia is one of our key partners. We launched already 2 programs. Currently, we had a launch on APA, Advanced Pricing Arrangement program with Italian Tax Administration. And overall, we have 4 programs with Georgia. And we've seen enormous progress in terms of the organizational development, in terms of the capacity building, and revenue mobilization. So, which is, I would say, more immediate impact compared to the long-term impact, which is capacity building.
Can you please help us to peek behind the kitchen, so to say? How does the process work? Who are the experts? So, how much time it takes to work, in this case, with Georgian officials, who they work with? How does the process go?
Brilliant. So, TIWB sent experts to developing countries' tax administration to work and sit along with a local auditor to conduct the real case, the audit case, right? So what are the sources? The main sources for us to deploy the expert is the partner administrations, and currently we have 20 partner administrations which deploy the experts for our programs, or the UNDP managed roster expert pool. And we have more than 50 experts under this roster. So how it works. We receive the assistance request form from the developing countries, and they might have a different request in different sectors. For example, it could be forestry, it could be extractives, telecommunication, financial transactions, but mainly it's about the international tax, about the transfer pricing, APAs, risk assessments. So we operate only and provide assistance on international tax, so we not cover the domestic tax. So we identify expert based on the request and the scope. We share this with our host administration, with the tax administration. So and try to match with the scope and the request. So they have a final say. They have a sovereign right to make a decision on during the selection process of the expert. So and then it's quite flexible, quite simple process. We contract the expert either from the partner administration, so which is the first thing go, and then if there is no such an expert, so we try to identify through the roster expert, we send the expert on ground and conduct the mission. So mainly it's about the transfer of knowledge and skills, right? So, and it's important to conduct the on-site missions. And since pandemic started 2020, we suspended all our missions and continued our operations remotely. It is efficient, but we see that the on-site missions are critical to transfer the knowledge and the skills. So that's why we now use the blended method, which includes the on-site plus the remote work, which increase at the end of the day, I think it works because it's increased the efficiency of delivering our programs. So I said that we focus on the audit programs, right? But the TIWB expanded to the new areas, which is criminal tax investigations, automatic exchange of information. And just here on the automatic exchange of information, you know that the Global Forum at the OECD is responsible for transparency agenda and implementation of the international standards. But TIWB complements really at the very latest stage where the countries need to effectively use the information they're receiving. It's mainly about the CRS standards, the treatment and use of the CRS. And we have just pilot program, one program with Malaysia, and learning as well to see how we can expand and help countries. But countries mainly who are reciprocal, they are eligible for the TIWB programs on the automatic exchange of information.
So this cooperation is with the government bodies, or is it with for example, companies as well, private companies? How does that work?
Thank you. So we help the tax administrations at in different in developing countries. So it's mainly it's about the building capacity within the tax administrations. So this has an effect. So
absolutely,
absolutely, and this increase the compliance, because if the tax administration is standard is strong and they have the capacity to conduct the taxation of the very complex transactions. So they know how to communicate with the taxpayer. They set the high standard. If you build the strong infrastructure, you build the trust, right? And you see that the compliance rate increased, so the voluntary compliance from the taxpayers is increasing. And at the end of the day, it helps to create an investment-friendly environment in the countries. So it has indirect impact, and this impact is beyond revenue.
Did you have any calculations how that affects the revenue side as well? Because that's also very important, right?
Absolutely. Overall, 1.6 billion USD collected through the TIWB programs.
That couldn't be otherwise collected if not the improvement of the processes and infrastructure that you have been talking about.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, we operate across the world, and this 1.6 billion USD is collected in additional tax revenues, and 3.9 billion tax assessed through the TIWB programs across the world. And we've seen that without help of the international tax experts, the local tax auditors have no enough resources and capacity to deal with the complex international cross-border transactions. So, for example, in Mongolia, through the ONE program, we raised 228 million USD through ONE programs, and that was an extractive sector.
Does the country have to pay for this service, or is it like grant-based, or how does that work?
No, I mean, when we conduct the programs, this is mainly as I said, either through the partner administrations, we deploy the expert, which means that the partner administration covers all the fees and the expenses related to the travel and the service provided on ground, or if it's expert, UNDP roster expert, UNDP covers the whole cost. So, and we are grateful to our donors who really support the TIWB programs worldwide. And there are an option and modality if the tax administration, after 2 or 3 programs, they see the development, and they are willing to contribute and co-finance the program. So there is a mechanism as well to use this type of this financial structure, but mainly our programs are supported by the partner administrations or donors.
What are some of the frequently asked questions, more broadly, globally about the process?
Yes, I mean, in terms of the design, it's quite simple and very flexible. We're very flexible, and I think that's why TIWB is so successful. And as I said, it complements to the broader work done by other international tax players. And it's kind of a niche assistance. And the main thing is that we don't substitute, meaning that we don't replace the local auditors. We really try through our expert to transfer knowledge and skills and build capacity.
Work with them, right?
Absolutely. This is a learning by doing approach. And I think this is, in terms of the questions, I would say that the scope and the requests maybe, if I can say, are different and different industries. So extractives, financial sectors, telecommunications. So I would say these are the key areas where we receive the requests.
More complex areas, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's quite
so
diverse.
What are the main challenges, like working with so many different countries? Probably what you mentioned, that you are focusing on international tax. Of course, that simplifies a lot for you, but still, I mean, each country is unique in its problems, in its approaches, in its culture. What are some of the main challenges that this learning by doing process encounters?
A very good question. I think it's case by case, and the biggest challenge we faced was the COVID, right? So the COVID was a challenge, but we tried, and with help of our partner administration, expert and host administrations, to sustain our operations, and 90% of our operations sustained during the COVID. That was the main challenge, because our experts being restricted to travel and to provide the on-site missions, and we, as I said, fully provided our assistance remotely. This is efficient in terms of time management, and experts were able to deliver more virtual missions compared to post-COVID. But we definitely, what we know from experts is that was still problematic, and we extended some of our programs on ground
so that
because
you
of
had
this.
To include, on-site visits as well, right?
Absolutely, because these are vital and instrumental to conduct the TIWB programs. In terms of the operations, I think, as you rightly said, all countries have their own cultural sensitivities, and we try to onboard the experts and advice before going on ground. But the good thing is that we have country offices, UNDP country offices there. And I think they provide a support as well in terms of technology. We've seen that in some countries there are slow internet, there is no good conference facilities. So I think this kind of the challenges we faced during the COVID, and the asymmetry of information. So when a lot of stakeholders, this is always an issue, but through our, I think, a model which is very flexible. So I think we're easily dealing with all these challenges, and operational.
Yes, and my last question, what are some of the future visions of TIWB? You mentioned that it has already expanded its scope beyond the visits that you just mentioned. Are there any areas where TIWB would see its support necessary and useful?
Definitely. As I said, when we started, we initially focused mainly on the transfer pricing audit and international tax audit cases, right? So now we expanded the TIWB to criminal tax investigations and automatic exchange of information. We're piloting and planning to explore the TIWB into the digitalization of tax administrations. So, and also, this historic agreement on Pillar 1 and Pillar 2, and TIWB will definitely contribute and provide us bespoke assistance to developing countries to implement these rules. And I think one of the immediate responses and immediate assistance could be the tax incentives under the global rules, where TIWB experts can help developing countries to implement these complex and complex rules. Yeah, absolutely. This is what we envisage, and definitely to gear up and cover more countries.
In the context of digitalization of economy, so that our readers as well understand what has become even more important after the COVID-19 pandemic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. These are like 21st century rules. These are the absolutely new chapter in international tax, and TIWB definitely will contribute in this process and will support the developing countries to implement all these regulations and the new rules.
Yes. Thank you so much, and of course wish you success, and thank you for this very interesting interview.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Research Center PMC publishes sector snapshots on the state of MFI sector in Georgia, and in this bulletin, the state of the sector during the period of 2018 Q1 to 2022 were overviewed. According to the report, from Q1 2020 to Q1 2022, the number of MFIs decreased slightly, dropping from 43 to 38. Interestingly, the number of employees in microfinance organizations during the same period had a slight upward trend, going from 4,202 to 4,246. In the first quarter of 2022, assets owned by MFIs amounted to around 2 billion lari, which represented a 7% increase compared to the first quarter of 2021. Meanwhile, the liabilities of MFIs amounted to around 1 billion lari, representing a 2% increase compared to the corresponding period of 2020. In 2021 compared to 2020, gross income increased by 12% and amounted to 373 million lari. Moreover, net income also increased compared to 2020 and reached around 98 million lari. In this same period, net income margin increased by 13 percentage points and reached 26%. According to PMC, by the end of 2021, the portfolio of loans issued by MFIs, both to individuals and to legal entities, amounted to around 1.3 billion lari, while the number of loans in the portfolio amounted to 72 million, while represented a 16% increase and a 10% increase, respectively, compared to the figure recorded by the end of 2020. Here's another sectoral review, this time from TBC Capital and on Georgia's wine sector. According to the updated overview of TBC Capital on Georgian wine sector, Georgian wine dependency on the Russian market has decreased from 90% in 2005 to 56%. However, despite this diversification in 2021, Russia 56%, Ukraine 10%, and CIS other countries 10% were the main exports markets for Georgia. TBC Capital projects that compared to 2021, Georgia's wine export will decline by 20 to 40% in 2022. In total, imports in Russia will be cut by 30 to 50%, depending on how the events unfold in Ukraine and what pressure international sanctions will have on Russia's economy. Later this week, BMG-TV visited GBS Winery and talked to its CEO and chief winemaker, Philip Leps, on many topics, including the perils of doing wine business in Georgia. Here's what the renowned winemaker has to say about the meaning of market diversification. Is it important to have export markets also diversified?
It's very important. You must be recognized in your country, and you must be as well recognized internationally. European, we always say such type of things. It's very important. You must not be just the king of your village. You must be as well, let's say, recognized internationally. That is, I repeat, that is an important point. Yes, with the diversity of our brands, we are capable to go in different markets, and we are capable to produce wines specifically for those markets. We are able as well to offer, let's say, a different categorization of prices, or from, let's say, standard ratio, good quality price, to more premium and even, I think, quite premium wines. That is very important. Initially, GVS was developed around ex-CIS countries, and now we want to really develop, and we want to prioritize some other countries, not only, let's say, ex-CIS countries, USA, China, Europe, for example.
And that's all for today. We will meet next Sunday. Till then, here is what you can wait for from Forbes Georgia.
The front line of innovation. This is what the cover of the new issue of Forbes Georgia in May looks like, on which Georgi Diasamidze, the general manager of Todua Clinic, is shown, who has followed his famous grandfather's career at the age of 18. In the clinic itself, more than 85 dissertations have been defended since the day of its establishment. 21 innovations have been planted. More than 300 radiologists have been trained. The clinic has various awards of the Georgian National Academy of Science, but that is not all. And with the combination of doctors and the latest equipment, competitive advantages and prospects in the medical institution, you must read the new issue of Forbes Georgia, where we share many more success stories.
Forbes Georgia's new edition also covers leaderboards about the richest people in the world, which number is 87 less in this year compared to the previous year. And the leader of the list is Elon Musk again. Also, we counted outsiders and the newly added millionaires. Shotat Qeshelashvili shares an opinion what volume of carbon emissions does the Georgian economy allocated based on the World Bank data. In the new issue, you also can read about Georgian European crypto business, on the back of which stands Vasil Babulani with experience, European investors, and preparing for the launch of the mining, plants and crypto fund. You will also get information about the general of Algo business. The global CEO of Stoli Group is Damian Makin, who tried his luck in the business, which is another successful story of the new issue. In addition, for a quarter of a century, Forbes has been investigating billionaire oligarchs, exploring their political connections, mysterious property and the labyrinth of offshore assets. And in the new issue, you will read everything you need to know about the wealthy elite who saw the benefits during the rule of Vladimir Putin. The May issue also tells you what property Vladimir Putin owns, what are the annual energy indicators, and calculate the impact of the Russian-Ukraine war on Georgia's foreign trade. So read Forbes, a century experienced guide to business and economics.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.